Okay, so the next topic is storage. So let's see how storage is handled in Kubernetes. This will be a relatively very small section, although it is an important one. So first of all, what is a volume? Let's say you have a pod and there are multiple containers inside of a pod. Volumes are additional volumes which are beyond the purview of the pod. So volumes are created outside of the pod and associated with a mount path in the pod. So all the containers in the pod will have access to the same mount path and eventually will have access to the volume. Now whenever application wants to write in that mount path or whatever data is put by the application in that mount path will be eventually put inside of the volume. So the advantage of this one is that even if the pod dies or goes out of existence, there's no way we can lose the data because the life cycle of the volume is external to the life cycle of the pod. Pod might come and go, but the volume will still exist. Now this is typically used with application log file systems wherein you want to keep the application logs for future analysis. Also, if you're hosting databases in pods, which rarely happens, you'd like to use something like volumes to host or to hold your data. Otherwise, if you hold data inside of the pod, the moment the pod goes out of existence, the data will also be lost. And the downside is that the volume has to be there in the node. Let's say you have 10 worker nodes, you need to have the volume in all the 10 worker nodes. Now these volumes can be provided by cloud service providers also, like AWS Elastic Block Store, and this would be the manifest file for a volume which is being given or provided by Elastic Block Store. API version, kind, and metadata you already know. In the spec, in container section, the first thing we have the volume mounts, which is this mount path, which says that on which path this volume will be mounted. And then we have an additional volumes section, which names the volume and the provider. It says that the volume would be provided by Elastic Block Store, AWS Elastic Block Store. Then we mention the volume ID and file system type. So the link between this AWS EBS volume and the mount path is the name. So if you see here, the volume's name is KTS volume vol, and the same name has been mentioned in the mount path also, which means that this mount path has to be taken from the volume with name this one, which is nothing but this one. And the same thing can be achieved using Google Cloud's Compute Engine persistent disks. The setup would be a little different. So the name would be same. Instead of AWS Elastic Block Store, we'll have to mention GC persistent disk, and then the name of the persistent disk using PD name, and then file system type. Now there's one more type which is host path, and we'll be using this one in our demo. So host path is nothing but a file system which is already associated with a device, either in AWS EBS or GC PD, and then we associate that with the pod. So here, instead of AWS Elastic Block Store or GC persistent disk, we mention host path, and with parameters like path should be the path on the node and the type is directory. Now, what is persistent volume claim, and storage class? So what is happening in the previous case is that the volumes are never external to the pod. I mean, we do not create it externally. So either we have host path or we have Elastic Block Store or Compute Engine persistent disk. We attach them as volumes. But there are a lot of limitations to that. And a better approach would be to put the lifecycle of the volume outside of the lifecycle of pod management. So that's where we have persistent volume, which separates the volume out of pods. So we have persistent volumes and we create or associate that persistent volume with AWS EBS or Azure Disk or Google Compute Engine persistent disks. And then the pod is separate. So we have a separate object pod and another object named persistent volumes. Then we have storage class, which is used to manage persistent volumes. Now this storage class would manage persistent volumes like increase and decrease of size, etc. If anything has to be done dynamically, that has to happen via the storage class. And then finally we have persistent volume claims, which are used by pods to get the volumes. So we have this additional component or object which is persistent volume claim, and this will be used by the pods to get the persistent volumes. Now there's a catch on this entire diagram or the way everything is handled. Now storage class would do dynamic provisioning using the cloud service providers. So storage class will actually use either AWS or Google Cloud or Azure Cloud to get the volume or increase or decrease the volume size for the persistent volumes. So if you are using storage class, we need to have the Kubernetes cluster associated with the cloud service providers. In our case, the clusters that we created using KubeADM, both on AWS and Google Cloud, we did not associate them with any cloud service provider. So we will not be able to use storage class, but still I'll show you how to create that. So all these three things are actually Kubernetes objects, which are managed separately than the pod. So we create persistent volume using a persistent volume object. Then we create storage class using storage class object, and then persistent volume claims using persistent volume claim objects. That's why the management and the life cycle of the storage parameters like volumes, etc., are completely separate than that of the pod itself. I'll go into the details of the manifest files of all these objects in the demo section itself.